Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to do a video about my gardening goals for 2024. But to start that video off, I think I need to share maybe a little bit more about myself so you guys can understand where I'm coming from for the goals. I haven't been gardening that long. I think I'm about to hit my 1 year mark on vegetable gardening. But I was hooked as soon as I started it, and really the reason that I started gardening is because I left my full-time career as an engineer to stay home with the kids, but I guess I was just looking for a way to learn something that I wouldn't normally have time to do if I was working a full-time career. And gardening, I live in Central Florida, so we have a really long growing season. We have such great weather until it gets like really, really hot in the summer. And so it just seemed like something I wanted to try, and I love it so far. So some of my goals are a little bit newbie oriented because I'm only like 1 year in. But I thought maybe you guys would find it interesting and maybe think about some of these goals for yourself too. My first goal is to nail down a succession planting plan for 3 vegetables to keep being able to harvest once a week and keep actually eating from the garden and having enough for a meal and having those plants be healthy. So what I mean by that is I need to figure out the time from seed to harvest in my area for kale. For example, my leafy green that I'm going to choose is kale because my family likes to eat it. It's a good salad green. I feel like it doesn't wilt as quickly as spinach, so I might be able to keep it in the fridge longer after harvesting. And so if I want to harvest 1 bunch of kale once a week for the whole year, how many basically square feet or how many spots of a kale head in my garden do I need? I think I would start week 1 with 1 kale plant, and then probably 1 week later I would plant another one. And so once a week I would plant one, and then it's time to harvest it. And once I harvest one, I should plant another one in that same exact spot, and then I should be on this cycle of having one to harvest and one to plant every week, and then I should always have that kale going as long as I can keep it healthy. The same thing with turnips. I think turnips, I discovered me and my family just really love turnips and turnip greens. I love that it really doesn't take that long to grow a turnip. It's like 45 days from seed to harvest, and we get the root vegetable, but we also get the leafy greens. And I found a recipe that was just really good for turnip greens. So I want to figure out, turnip greens are a little bit more difficult than, turnips are a little more difficult than kale in the sense that I'm not sure how many turnips I need for like 1 meal for a week for my family, right? I think maybe I would need, like, if they're big enough, what we would probably eat is, like, my family of 5 probably eat like 8 turnips maybe if I chop them and roast them and then have the greens. But I feel like I need to plant more than what I need because there were some that I couldn't get the root to develop into a bulb, and so I want to that's something that I need to figure out. Like, if I want to actually harvest and eat 8 turnips every single week, how many do I need to plant? And hopefully I get better at root bulb development over the course of the year. The last vegetable I want to do is a fruiting vegetable. My kids love cucumbers. If I slice them up and put salt on them, or actually if they're the mini cucumbers, they honestly just take the whole cucumber in their lunchbox and they eat it whole. And it's the easiest thing for me to pack in their lunch. And I love them too. They go great on salads, and they go great with like a little soy sauce or something. But in Florida, we get a lot of pest pressure. Last spring, I planted cucumber plants, and there came a time in about June where it was like, that cucumber plant, there's no way I can keep that thing alive. Like, the leaves were like just really full of holes. They were also yellowing, and the thing was really wilting. And I actually heard somewhere that if you let a cucumber be fully grown on and connected to the vine, it's like a signal to the plant to go ahead and die because it's done its job. And so I must have done that and the plant just died. But a strategy is to let that happen but have your backup plant ready to go. So you've already got your seed started. You've got a transplant ready to go whenever that one's dying. So you probably need, if I wanted, usually at the grocery store I would buy 1 to 2 bags of the mini cucumbers for a week for my family of 5. And so I think that's maybe 2 plants that I need to be able to harvest from. So anyway, I don't have that one all the way figured out, but that's a goal of mine. So kale, turnips, and cucumbers are what I plan to figure out this year in such a way that I can harvest it every single week. My second goal is to figure out how I want to manage pests. I feel like this year I was trying several different things. I had neem oil, spinosad, BT, and then I had like some fungicide too for, it was a copper fungicide that I was using to try to fight bean rust. And then I was trying things like the dish soap and water, baking soda and water mixture and spraying it on the plants. And I've seen some videos on TikTok and stuff about like a pest hack where you do like soy sauce and olive oil or something like that to catch all the slugs. And so I think this is probably like a lofty goal for me, but I want to, after, like at the end of 2024, I want to like have a decision about how I'm managing the pests. Like if I see melon worms, what is my go-to? Is it BT, or am I going to try a homemade method, or am I going to try the dish soap and water, or what? Like what's my preferred method? And with squashes and fruiting plants that are so much more like temperamental to the stuff that you spray on them, do I have a different technique for the pests on those? So like squash bugs, how would I fight a squash bug? Is spinosad how I'm going to do it, or is it a homemade solution that's like a trap crop or something like that? So that, I think it's lofty because there's a whole lot of pests, so I've got to be able to identify them, which is hard. I've got to be able to, have enough time to try different methods of pest control this year, and then come away with like a decision of, whenever I see a squash bug, this is what I'm going to do. So I think maybe that's something all of us gardeners struggle with, identifying the pests and then treating them properly. I do think the answer to that goal is it's going to be a combination of products or techniques, like trap crop, plant it really close to an herb as a pest deterrent, or I think it's going to be a mixture of things as the answer, but I want to have that answer by the end of 2024 for the crops that I mainly grow. My third goal is to get much better at maximizing my garden space. So I live in a suburban area. I mean, we only have like 1/3 or 1/4 of an acre of land. I mean, you can see from the image behind me that my backyard's a pretty good size and it is fenced. So I could fill this up with garden space, but my kids still want, space to play soccer ball in the backyard and stuff like that. And so I don't necessarily want to put gardens right smack in the middle of my backyard. So it's really important to me to figure out how to maximize the garden space that I do have. I think I want to think vertically with trellises, or experiment with things that would hang from my fence, like a window trough or other types of hanging planters. And also, like, I can hang it from the ceilings in my lanai. I just want to maximize that. What I did this year to try to maximize my garden space was square foot gardening. And I listened to the recommendations that you can Google or find in the back of the Square Foot Gardening book about spacing. So it was like, one example of something that I didn't like was the squashes require 4 square feet. So you're dedicating a pretty big space in your garden to those squash plants. But it takes a long time for those squash to actually get big enough to even come close to taking up that kind of space. So I want to be better about using that available space while it's available and being ready to harvest something out of the way when the plant gets big enough. So when my squashes or cucumbers or tomatoes are still small, I want to have spinach probably growing around it, or even radishes that are radish and spinach and arugula. They're all super fast growing. I could just plant like really dense, plant those lettuces around it and the radish around it, and then harvest it, and don't succession plant it because of all the space that theoretically would be taken up by the squash. However, as soon as it's long enough to fit on a vertical trellis and be lifted up off the ground, the space is really still available. So I guess I kind of disagree that a squash needs 4 square feet of space in your garden. I think it needs far less, but you need to be prepared to, there is usually a lag time where it's not quite big enough to reach to clip onto your trellis. You might need some more space at that point. But spinach would be great. Radishes would be great. They're really quick. They're really fun. So that's my third and final goal of maximizing my garden space. So I just shared 3 of my goals for 2024, but I also want to talk about things that I'm interested in learning in 2024. So if you listen to the beginning part of this video, I shared that I'm only about a year into a vegetable gardening experience. And so what I did in the fall this year was plant a high variety of plants. And I did that on purpose, so that I could experience the different pests, the different diseases that I might see, or figure out how long it takes something to grow, or whether I even like to grow something. My celery is taking forever, so maybe I don't really like growing celery, and we never even eat celery. But I planted it so that I could have some experience under my belt. And I think 2024, the early part of 2024 for me is still going to be, I'm still going to be in that mindset of planting a high variety, so that I can get under my belt, I can get that cool season high variety like I'm finishing up right now. And then I'll have that warm season high variety under my belt. And, then I'll have a good understanding of the plants and how they grow and what I like to eat and what I like to harvest, what I like to grow. But the later part of 2024, I think instead of doing such a high variety to learn, I want to kind of switch gears and turn into learning how to harvest, how to plan for what my family actually eats, and maybe even get into some preserving. So as the seasons change, I feel like it's a good opportunity to figure out or try to learn some seed saving techniques. There's some like herbs, for example, like my cilantro is about to bolt. I could let it bolt and see if it will self-sow the seeds, and I'll have cilantro again in a month. I'm not sure. Or do I actually want to harvest the seeds? Like on my marigolds, do I want to pull those seeds out and plant them again? So that's something I haven't tried yet. I have never harvested a seed, believe it or not. So I'm going to try some of that this year and get that under my belt and share some of my discoveries along the way. And as the seasons change, another thing that I want to do is consider crop rotation. So, it's fairly common knowledge among gardeners that you've got some heavy eater plants like your squashes and stuff like that. But then you've got your nitrogen fixers like your beans that you would succession plant with corn right after because they're heavy nitrogen eaters. So I want to learn some of that, but I feel like it's a really, sometimes trying to learn all of these things can be a little overwhelming. So I am probably just going to take it a day at a time and say, for instance, if I harvest my beans and I'm ready to remove my bean plant because it's not doing well or I don't like it anymore and I want to put something else there, I'll just do a little research and figure out what's the right plant to follow a bean planting. There's also some soil health techniques that I want to learn. I want to dabble in composting, maybe a little more than dabbling. My husband just got me a big in-ground composter from Vigo Garden that actually goes into your garden bed, and you fill it up with your compost as you should. I know it's like you've got to kind of layer your brown things like your coffee and your dried leaves with some greenery or whatever. I haven't figured out composting at all. I have never tried it, but this year I'm gonna try it, and we'll see how it goes. I know it takes time, but I think as something that goes along with composting, I'm going to try worms and worm castings. I know there's naturally worms in my soil. There was, before I even put the raised beds there, I could see all the worms underneath, so I'm sure they just climbed up into the soil after I put the raised bed there. But I think I might want to try adding additional worms or worm castings. To me, if I have the in-ground composter in the raised bed and then I add worms, I'm giving the worms the food, they'll break it down, and then they'll provide all the castings I need. So I don't think I'm actually going to buy castings. But don't hold me to that. I need to learn about soil health techniques, and that's one of the techniques I'm going to learn. Another thing I am interested in trying is cover crops. So cover crops are something that you would like plant in between two different, like once you harvest or you remove a plant fully and you want to regenerate that soil below it, you can plant a cover crop. And the concept behind a cover crop is that it puts a lot of nutrients back into the soil. So if, for instance, I can't figure out what I'm going to do with that raised bed for now or something, or that portion of the raised bed, let me just put some clover in there or some rye and let it regenerate the soil while I think about what to do. In the middle of last year, after I had my first round of plants finish up, well, embarrassingly enough, I had some empty space in the garden for like 2 months. And I just was like, every day I was like, what am I going to do with that space? I don't know what I'm going to do with that space. And now looking back, I'm like, that was so dumb. I should have just put a cover crop there. Or, you know, on my side of my house where I think I might want to put an in-ground garden, right now I should probably be planting a cover crop in that entire area and let it do its thing. And then maybe I'll think about it and figure out how to work with the soil after I do that. So I'm excited about that. Lots of new things to learn, lots of goals this year. Hope you guys want to follow along. Hit that like and subscribe button. And I'll be sure to, you know, keep you posted on all these goals and all these things I'm learning. These are some of the topics of the videos that you'll see this year. I'm looking forward to it.